Welcome to the Sermon B-Side Podcast, a podcast of Liberti Church in the Harrisburg region of central Pennsylvania. Sermon B-Side is designed to be a resource to answer your questions and to go deeper into the conversation started by each week's sermon.
Welcome to another episode of the Liberti B-Side Podcast. I'm your host, Jenna Wright, and I'm joined today by the one and only Matt Looloian, who was back in the preaching saddle just yesterday. Matt, welcome back to the B-Side Podcast.
Good to be back. We
did do an episode last week.
We had a delayed recording,
preaching, though. So hopefully this one is a little less interesting, although I think it was maybe a little bit helpful for some of our folks out there. But
there's some good questions that we got from. I mean, all these last sermons, there's been some really good questions that people have sent in, and we got some good ones today too. But yeah, maybe not quite as controversial as maybe a few of the ones in the sexuality sermon. Which, hey, small wins. We're thankful for over here. So, Matt, you did kind of continue us on in our sermon series on Leviticus. We're nearing the end of the sermon series, so we're one more week. We're coming to the end of this and the end of Bible studies for this semester. Yesterday, you continued on in Leviticus chapter 25, and so why don't you just, for the people at home, just recap really quickly what you preached on from Leviticus 25 yesterday? Yeah, Leviticus 25 continues the pattern that we've seen in Leviticus, but also through the entire Pentateuch, these first 5 books of the Bible, where God establishes the pattern of work for 6, rest for 1. So we see that in creation in Genesis 1. We see in Exodus when God gives the 10 commandments, the command of the Sabbath day. Leviticus is picked up on talking about the Sabbath day. We've looked at that even in this series. So then when we got to chapter 23, a couple Sundays ago, it talked about the seven being the big number in the Bible, the 7 annual feast days or weeks, festival days, where there was rest built into that, worship and rest built into that.
Yeah.
And so chapter 25 then kind of comes in behind 23 and zooms out at a couple of different levels. One is the 7-year cycle.
Yeah.
So it's not just work for 6 days, rest for 1. It's also work the land for 6 years and then let it lie fallow for 1. There's a Sabbath year every 7. And then when that happens 7 times, 7 cycles of that 7, after the 49th year, the 50th year is called the year of Jubilee.
Super Sabbath.
The super Sabbath.
Yeah.
The Sabbath of Sabbaths was what the one commentator put it. But it's also a year of rest for the people and for the land, but also has a bunch of these other components in it. There's rest in there, but there's also a return, a lot of restoration and redemption language in Leviticus 25. So those are the 3 things that we then broke it down and talked about. To keep a Holy Jubilee required being weirdly committed. We talked about how this would make the people of God weird in the ancient Near East, and how Christians also are weird in any culture that they go to because of some of these things, the principles of some of these things.
So should we be reshaping our vision statement to keep liberty weird?
Keep liberty weird. That's our name. Forget live, speak, and serve.
Yeah.
It's just keep liberty weird.
Who needs it? Yeah.
But the weird commitment, the principles of Jubilee and what they look like today for Christians, the Christians should be weirdly committed to practicing rest, responsibility, and redemption. So then talked about each of those things. And we got some great questions. We got some different ideas to maybe kick around today a little bit. But there's also some Bible study questions.
Yeah. So Bible studies this week. So we only have one more sermon next week, wrapping up Leviticus. And for many groups, this will probably be the last week that you're meeting, because next week will be Thanksgiving week. So we're coming to the end of our Bible studies together. And this week, Matt, as we consider Leviticus 25, I know that I kind of feel this. We're so separated from that agrarian context of being hyper-dependent on the land, if you will, around us, and like that backbreaking labor that you kind of talked about and touched on yesterday. So what are some areas in these questions that we provided this week in our Bible study sermon application document that like groups can really lean into to make this applicable to now in 2025? Camp Hill or wherever you live, what would it look like to take these principles of Jubilee and carry it this week? So any thoughts of where they can hang their hats this week, Matt?
Yeah, I mean, the way we structured some of the Bible study questions follow along with those points from the sermon the other day, but there's an overarching one that kicks it off that probably would provide a little good fodder for discussion about being distinct. Holiness at its essence means being other or distinct.
Yeah.
God is holy. That means he's other. He's separate from his creation. He calls his people to be holy, not in the exact same sense that he is, but in the same sense of being other or distinct from people who don't worship him, who don't acknowledge him as God. So this first question is about, does your life make too much sense to your non-Christian neighbors and friends and family members and coworkers?
What do you think, for batting that around,
is
some evidences that your life does make too much sense to our neighbors or non-Christian friends or family members, Matt?
Yeah. If someone gets to know you, I think on the surface level, there are some similarities. So it's not that you have to be eccentric. It's not that you like weirdness doesn't mean eccentricity.
How are
it
we
doesn't
defining
mean,
weird?
Yes. Doesn't mean, talking about not being creepy, not being separatists. That's some of those pieces. But so there are going to be some surface level similarities, but as a neighbor would get to know you and your life, and would get to observe your life, maybe even a normal day in your life or a normal week in the course of your life, would there be things that they would make them go, like there's something more than that. This is just a nice, pleasant, suburban, that's most of our people. I know not everybody at Liberti is in the suburbs, but a nice, pleasant neighbor. And where they would kind of say, I think maybe one of the litmus tests for me is always, is there something about my faith in Jesus specifically that actually makes this person go like, I should consider faith in Jesus because otherwise, like my life looks kind of just like theirs does. It looks like a pretty generally happy, pretty life that's going pretty well on the surface. So I think that's maybe some of those comparisons. So like how you prioritize your time. Is your home open to other people in a consistent way that like maybe wouldn't be normal for your neighborhood? How many activities are your kids involved in?
Right.
In the conversations that you have with your neighbors, is it always like, gosh, can you believe how busy we are? And it's all this, it's like, what if someday we didn't actually say it the same way that our neighbors did?
Interesting.
I think there's a lot that you could kind of pull on there, but yeah.
So I think also, so that's kind of like that first question, but there's some, more applicable questions of digging into these areas of rest and responsibility and redemption. I wanted to really briefly, so under redemption, we're talking about redemption in our family and redemption for kind of broader society or the greater good, I think is how you framed it yesterday.
Yeah.
But I just from your perspective, from a pastoral perspective, is there anything that we can bat around in groups this week about how redemption, obligation of redemption, specifically these Jubilee principles that we can be applying not just in our biological families, but like church family?
Yeah.
Is there any overlap in how we should be thinking about that obligation of redemption that we kind of carry as those who've been redeemed, Matt?
Yeah, it's a great question. And especially as you get into what does Jesus fulfill?
Right.
And when Jesus breaks down the barriers between nations and between different kinds of people, one of the beautiful pictures in the New Testament of the church is that it is the family of God. Yeah. That there's one new humanity made out of the many humanities.
Right.
And so there's an error to say like now the immediate family or the extended biological family doesn't matter anymore.
Correct.
But there's also another error to say like that's the only thing that matters. Like the biological extended clan family as it was in the Old Testament, that was the thing that mattered the most. And because of tribal differences, because of geographic distances, because of even hostilities with other nations that were not worshipers of God, there would be these dividing walls of hostility is what Ephesians 2 calls them. Those being broken down in Christ means that our view of family is not less than the immediate nuclear family or the extended biological family, but it's more than that. Yeah. And it includes brothers and sisters in Jesus that we welcome into our lives. Yeah. So caring for one another in the church family, bearing one another, like all the one another's, if you think about those 55 one another's of the New Testament, those apply not just to your clan, not your biological family, your extended family, they apply to your church family. Yeah. And so there's a ton of commitment, responsibility we have for each other in the church. And maybe one of the beautiful ways to include that would be, or to celebrate things like Jubilee is when there would be, gathering celebrations of some of these like type festival days that were part of in the annual rhythms, even in the life of Israel. that those clans that would gather together, well, our clans should be this beautiful mixture of biological and church family folks. Like that should be this. And even it's like when we've got to do that with our family, that's been a real joy when we've gotten to have members of our extended family alongside some members from our church, maybe even alongside some people from our neighborhood that don't know Jesus. And we kind of pull that really interesting group together. And there's actually some really cool stuff that God does in those dynamics.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of challenge of overlap in all of those relationships where it's like you're sharing mission, but you're also incorporating your biological family. You're opening up, if you're married, bringing in single people and including them into your family. There's so many different elements of that, but underlying all of that kind of responsibility of redemption, like looks like if you've got something going on between you and a brother or sister, like you're supposed to move first in that as well. You know what I mean? Like in the same way, we don't let those things go in our biological family. You kind of touched on yesterday. We have the same responsibility in our church family as well. So that might be helpful to bat around as well in your Bible studies this week. So that's Bible studies for this week. Let's transition into some listener questions. So people are really trying to wrestle, Matt, I think, with like, okay, this is all great, but like, how do I actually do this now? And which is, I think, fair. So this first question that we have is, what does it actually look like to practice Jubilee in a modern calendar time? Like weekly Sabbath on Saturday or Sunday, it makes sense. Though if I wanted to practice every 7 months or 7 years, how can I actually start? So it sounds like this person is wrestling with the idea of rest fundamentally, right? And the concept of Sabbath. So what does incremental change of the progression of actually practicing rest look like today, Matt?
Yeah, I think I love that this person pointed out that the weekly rhythm, and that's the whole picture of Leviticus, is that they build into one another. Like the person who is faithful to keep to rest 1 day out of every 7 is formed into the kind of person that keeps the festival days, is formed into and then it just builds from there.
Yeah.
So without those specific, are we good? Are we still recording?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Nice. Sorry. It looked like it was frozen up there. Without the specific, binding commitments of the Old Testament law and practices like these, it's different. You guys were talking last week when you and Jordan were on about the civil versus the moral and those kinds of things. I think the annual rhythms that we have some holidays that are different from the specific holidays that are given in the Old Testament, but holidays nonetheless that we can keep and we can use for rest. Sometimes even that the Christian calendar does line up still in some ways with our society's calendar, and those days are off for a lot of people, maybe not everybody from work, but you keep kind of an annual rhythm where there are days of feasting and celebration, some days of fasting even, like I think of Ash Wednesday and Good Friday, those kinds of days for us. The other piece that's different for us contextually is a lot of our employers have vacation built in. Guess what you didn't have in a normal year of sowing and harvesting? Guess what you didn't have if you were an agrarian worker in the ancient Near East? You didn't have like 2 or 3 or 4 or whatever weeks of vacation built into your.
But also venturing away from like your plot of land was like a whole thing.
You wouldn't do that.
Yeah,
that would not. You couldn't just hop over to another town
unless it was for a specifically focused festival or thing that you needed to do that.
That's exactly right. And so in a way, kind of using the things that are part of our cultural context, that there are these different rhythms that can be redeemed in the way that is used for rest.
Yeah.
In a way maybe that it would also be weird culturally. Like it wouldn't just be using all of your vacation time to do another project or to accomplish something or be productive, but to truly rest.
So another person is kind of asking a follow-up question to this. And basically they're saying, most professions don't offer sabbaticals, basically like programmed times of rest into work schedules and things like that. So this person is asking, should we actually do radical things like quit our job to take a year off? Like, is there, in your head, what are wise radical shifts that we can do to actually practice rest in this modern time, Matt?
Yeah, great question. I would say for the average person, no. Don't quit your job every 6 years. I don't think that would be wise. And in a way, I think that could also be neglecting the good gift of imaging God in your work.
Yeah.
And having a vocation to work hard in. Most employers would not take kindly to you leaving for a year and expecting that you're going to just get your job back when you come back. And the other piece being that God gave specific promises to Israel that he was going to provide an abundance of harvest in the 6th year so that they would have provision for them in that year that they were not working the land.
Yeah.
God did not make that promise to you that if you quit your job, you're going to have just automatically provision coming for that year.
Yeah.
A couple of important differences. One is that the intensity of the physical strain of this kind of work still happens in certain cultures and in other parts of the world, certainly, and in certain professions and vocations in our
industries.
In our industry, like you think people that, and there are some of those patterns built into certain vocations. So folks that go, mariners, people that work on ships for long periods of time, typically then get long periods of time to rest. They're on for several months and then they're off for several months. People that work on oil rigs, people that do intense manual labor that requires them to be gone or doing so. So there is a little bit of that built in. But I guess the question underneath this is like, what does it look like then to kind of take those bigger years of rest? And I think there's a few things you can do. But one is without even quitting your job, there is a way to look at other priorities of your life and to build in maybe a rhythm of every 7 years doing a really deep reflection of what's all the accumulated, we are accumulators, right? My house accumulates stuff. When I lived in an apartment, I did not have that much stuff. When I bought a house, and not even trying to, I just accumulated stuff.
And you also have 3 daughters accumulating stuff.
I've accumulated kids in there too. So as I've accumulated kids, I've also accumulated exponentially. I've accumulated stuff. But and our calendars do the same thing. We accumulate stuff. And based on your personality, you can start to make more and more things non-negotiable. And your calendar just becomes packed with all the commitments that you've made. So this is like another principle where like officers in our church, why can they serve 2 consecutive 3-year terms, but then are required to take a year off? This is why. It's not that we don't want them back. It's often we really do want them back, but it's to say that the commitment that takes, it's really helpful to have a year of rest.
Yeah, it's a huge lift.
And for you in a vocation that of course doesn't have that rhythm built in, there's still a lot of other stuff that's part of your life. And maybe asking that question of like, what if I kind of accumulated and made non-negotiable that I can now say, maybe that's really not negotiable and I can rest from that commitment.
And that's a good discussion to have, like where are some spaces that you should be more open-handed about. And that's really good to invite community into in that process as well to help you to do that process. Yeah,
and absolutely. Yeah, don't do that on your own. And also just consider the difference of our cultural context as much as you can, where most of us don't get physically exhausted from our labor the way everyone would have in this society.
Yeah.
Most of us get vacation the way people in this society did not get vacation. And most of us have incredible amounts of time for leisure that was not available to people in this society. So, I mean, you look at kind of the overall picture and say, there's probably ways to redeem the time daily, weekly, yearly, in ways that they were not able to, that cumulatively still makes us weirdly committed to rest.
Okay, so let's transition a little bit. This question's pretty practical as well, but it is leaning into that redemption point that you talked about yesterday. And what does it actually look like to redeem in relationships in an extended family or even immediate family, I guess you could say. As the holidays are approaching, there's a unique opportunity to mend, reconcile, redeem them. And in light of this chapter in Leviticus, how do we go about when all of our families are kind of returned to be gathered? So Matt, in your perspective, pastorally, what does it look like to have this framework of redemption as we maybe go into family spaces that might be hard with the holidays ahead?
Yeah, I'm grateful for the question, and that is a reality for a lot of people. There's a lot of sin breaks relationships, and they break them in the places that the relationships really are significant. There's a lot of times, so families have a lot of brokenness in them.
Yeah.
I hope it's clear that there are circumstances. I was talking yesterday about how God's people, don't cut off family members. They redeem. They're in the business of redeeming family members.
Yep.
The whole idea of kinsman redeemer in
Yep.
Leviticus 25. And I hope it's clear. I mean, there are circumstances where, there's been abuse. There's reasons that it makes sense to have boundaries in place.
Right.
So I hope that no one overread that in a way that I was not intending for that to be read.
Hmm.
But I think if anything, our society is so on extreme on the other side that and anything that it makes you uncomfortable, anything where you feel like you've been hurt or wounded or offended by a family member automatically equals this person is toxic and abusive, and therefore I have no relationship with them anymore.
Right.
That's what I'm saying. That's bad.
Yeah.
Our culture has moved in a way that's not healthy on that. So what does it look like to do that? Well, I think it requires a lot of communication. It requires a lot of pre-work in your own heart.
Yeah.
And preparation, asking God, the Holy Spirit, to give you love for those who have hurt you or who have affected your life in a negative way, to really move into a posture, heart level of forgiveness.
Yep.
Even if the full reconciliation piece is going to take a lot of time or not be possible based on where that person is, that you would be able to release them in Jubilee, right? To release them from the debt that they would be into you because of the way that they've hurt you. And the only way to do that is, whenever a debt is released, someone pays. Yep. And that's it's costly. And the whole picture of even what we pray often together in the Lord's Prayer as a church family is we're asking God to forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. We're looking at our own life and saying, I'm the one who has been forgiven the parable Jesus tells, the $500 billion debt. Yeah. So I, therefore, to be consistent, have to find a way to forgive the $10 debt. I'm not trying to minimize the hurts that people experience there, but that's the parable of that Jesus tells. So to do that hard work, to communicate, I think to do the hard work of even showing up in those spaces is courageous. Takes a lot of courage. And to show up there, I think to communicate with those folks and even express if there's been, even especially this last year since you've seen them last, these last 6 months since you've seen them, to convey, hey, I know it's been a little tense. I know it's been a little bit, that we felt some distance here, but want you to know, I'm glad we're getting time together. And if there's conversations that we can have to help be at peace with each other, I would like to do that. Yeah. Some expression like that just communicates a desire and a posture and a hopefulness that may not be reciprocated. But what Paul says is, so far as it depends upon you, live at peace with one another. And so what you can't control is how other people are going to respond. What you can control is, so far as it depends upon you, pursue that kind of peace. So that's maybe a couple initial thoughts I have there.
Yeah. And I think that's really helpful. And even just like what I was thinking through is not just forgiveness, but any roots of bitterness, though, that has developed in us through like years of unforgiveness, right? That I think can kind of take root and then therefore frame everything that person or other people in those complicated scenarios do. Yeah. I think it's wise to some of the pre-work is crucifying or offering that bitterness at the foot of the cross as well as we prepare to go into those spaces. That's really good. So just one other note there. That was my thought. Mm-hmm. Let's transition a little bit. So this person is asking in chapter 25. It's mostly talking about brothers in this passage. So, which I take as either fellow Israelites or people specifically in their clan. Should we extend these provisions to today in our daily living and an extension of that outward to the sojourner living among us? So, like, I guess what they're trying to get at is some of the ways that they're intended to treat other people from the heart of God and the law of God here. Are we to like actually carry that out in the same kind of way in our modern context, Matt?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And I think it definitely does apply to people that are broader than just your specific clan or family. There are different specifics in Leviticus 25, and it's complex to get in there and see those layers of relationships because there's clearly a value given to the sojourner and the stranger. God even says if one of your brothers has to like sell themselves into servitude, treat them like a sojourner and a stranger. Yep. So, which means it's like that's not a negative thing. There are extra provisions for those that were part of your brothers. And that was meaning anybody from the line of Abraham. That's meaning the entire, group of Israelite people.
Yeah.
There were extra provisions, but the emphasis in Leviticus 25 through and through, this would have been a whole other part of the sermon that we didn't have time for yesterday. But the emphasis through and through is not on why you're allowed to treat people from other nations not quite as good. The emphasis is on the extravagance of the grace and the generosity that you give to the brother. So it's like, still be gracious and treat people well if they're not that in your family, but then like go to an extreme level if it's for those that are brothers.
Which is like similar to what John talks about in like, they will know us by our love for one another, that we're going over and beyond in our love and affection in the people of God. And that is actually a missional component to that draws people toward authentic relationship with God and his people.
And where John talks about there, John 13, that's a great spot to kind of see some of the modern application, the new covenant application. And then Galatians, where Paul says in Galatians 2, as we have opportunity, do good to all people, but especially to those who are of the household of faith.
Right.
So there's something there, and certainly in light of the fulfillment of Jesus, like we talked about earlier, making one new humanity out of the many, there is an obligation, a responsibility, a commitment to care for people far beyond just your immediate family or people that are like you. And just a little teaser, we're going to spend January, Mercy and Justice Month this year, in the parable of the Good Samaritan. And that's going to be Jesus illustrating very profoundly and strongly what it actually means to love your neighbor in light of Jesus's fulfillment of the law. So that's that neighbor, the Samaritan, versus the Jewish person who was beaten up and left for dead. Very much outside the bounds of brother in that context.
So, okay, this person is asking a very practical question now. So they're wrestling with that idea that as God's people, we must treat people, especially people in our families, our church family, fairly, right? And so they're wrestling with the implications of, but we're also operating in a broken world. So they're asking, there's a serious problem of people who take advantage of other people's charity or kindness or grace, however you want to frame that, because they deserve it, and it's not stealing if someone gives it to you. How do we balance our call of charity while also encouraging people to be not to be dependent on our gifts and becoming entitled to them? So I mean, this is really kind of like a mercy question, right? How do we balance when and where we show mercy, Matt? I guess, especially since you just talked about the Good Samaritan. Is there like a nugget that's a precursor truth there?
Yeah, it's a great question. So what I love about Leviticus 25 in the year of Jubilee is that the return of the land and the people returning to their land, it's economic opportunity. So it's not, there's a ton of mercy in it. There's a ton of grace in it. It's undeserved. You couldn't afford to stay on your land. You had to sell it. So you did. Now you get it back. So you're being given a gift that you did not earn or deserve. That's grace. That's mercy. It's an unbelievable gift. And yet it's a gift that also is setting you up to now have to work the land again. It's not saying, and now you're taken care of. Now we're taking care of all of those needs. We're helping you provide for yourself in the way that God originally had set you up to and intended for you to do. So I think when we think about mercy and we think about the kind of financial gifts we give, as much as possible, we're trying to empower opportunity for people. We're trying to help them. Like, I mean, there's all these adages that people have used over the years, like, don't give a man a fish, teach a man to fish, or it's, what's the phrase? Like, you give a man a fish, you feed him for a day, you teach a man to fish, you feed him for a lifetime. It's that's empowerment. That's opportunity, as opposed to just complete charity. Now, in that, there are people that just are not able to provide for themselves. There's all kinds of... I was
going to say, the Good Samaritan is an example where that person probably was never paid back.
Sure.
In that story, right? So what do we do with that? Kind of like drastic mercy shown there.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a lot of what it is to just give, like, even a principle in the modern day of like not charging interest to people is to say, well, what if you were able just to give them that in a way that set them up to be able to get out of poverty? And you have to be wise about that.
Yeah.
So I mentioned yesterday, I've chewed on this a little bit, like different ideas that like maybe how to do this.
Yeah.
So like one on that front, right? How do we do that? And I actually talked to a guy after church yesterday who's thought more about this than I have in a housing crisis. And is there a way in a housing crisis like we're in right now to create maybe collectively a church like ours that people have additional resources, especially if they're thinking about their broader common good and other people, to create in essence, a fund that people can apply to. And again, you're looking for people that would be stepping into the responsibility of ownership, but you can lend that money to them, at either no interest or at basically inflationary interest. Because our economy is different than their economy. Their money had more staying power than our money does in terms of like every year our money's worth like 2 to 3% less. So like if you do, there's wisdom about principles and how to think through those things. But my point being, very much less than what like the bank would be able to would be charging them. Not trying to profit off them as much as just kind of break even or give them something. Yeah. There's a whole this more than I do.
A lot of times that's employed in other countries for businesses. Microloans.
That's a huge part of global missions right now is microloans to people, help them to get a small business off the ground that they can then provide for their family.
Yeah, and those are best done and functioning when you have national believers pooling money into a fund that is wisely managed and then therefore used to kind of spearhead opportunity, as you used yesterday.
That's right. And definitely to continue to support people that can't provide for themselves.
Right.
And in that, like and this is from a Tim Keller book that our deacons use as part of their training when they're becoming deacons. But the phrase that comes out from that book that's been really helpful is let mercy limit mercy.
Yep.
So there are times we want to lead with mercy. We want to serve people.
And that's kind of like our deacon's motto. We want to lead with mercy when it comes to benevolence stuff.
Yep.
Yeah.
So when someone comes in that we don't know and they're like, I have no food, we'll lead. We're gonna err on the side of mercy. Here's a gift card to a grocery outlet. Or we can help you get those groceries.
Yep.
We're gonna err on the side of mercy. What we're gonna then do is say, but we to care for you well long term, we need to have some kind of communal connection to you. We need to get to know you a little bit. And eventually, if people just are looking for kind of the handouts, and it feels like it starts to be more of like an entitlement kind of thing, then we say, well, hey, because we love you, here's what we can do, and because we love you, here's what we can't do, because we think it's actually hurting you to just perpetually, when you're someone who would be able to provide for yourself or be in a community that would help you more definitively, to not do that. So we're going to let mercy limit mercy.
Yeah. This person is also curious. You kept saying yesterday that you weren't an economist. And
did I say that multiple times?
I think you said it once.
Okay, I remember saying it for sure.
I think you said it only one time. But,
that's funny.
But you said you weren't an economist.
Yeah.
But are there economists that have thought through this intersection of preserving personal property, like actually caring for your family, and your legacy is kind of the language you used yesterday, matters, while also doing this concept of wanting the benefit of for the collective society around us as well. Do you know anyone, or is there anyone maybe even in our congregation that might be willing to tackle these kinds of conversations, Matt?
One of our elders teaches economics at a local university. So, we do have people that think about this stuff and have thought about this globally and done work globally in that front and locally.
Yeah.
So yes, there are people that have thought about this a lot more.
Even our deacon of generosity, maybe.
We have a deacon of generosity who thinks about stuff like this.
Yeah.
We just have smart people in our church that have been involved in businesses and own businesses and have, thought deeply about economics. So I think there are people that are much more further down the road on thinking about this than I am. There's also some great resources out there. The book itself, When Helping Hurts, has had multiple editions now published, but the folks that wrote that, and I'm drawing a blank on the name of the center, but it's based down in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And it might be called the Chalmers Center is the name that's kind of in the back of my mind, but it's basically a a group that thinks about this exact question.
Yeah.
And how do what are the economics of Christianity look like? How do we encourage private ownership in a way that says I'm taking responsibility for a place, but not that runaway train of greed and materialism that sometimes comes along with the unbridled forms of capitalism.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think there's a lot of fodder and conversations that you can have offline about those kinds of things in conversations. Certainly one of our elders or one of our deacons would love to talk more about some of these things. But let's get to a specific question about oppression in our society.
Yeah.
So yesterday you talked about, I forget what it's called, payday loans. What are those called?
Yeah, payday loans.
Payday loans. But this person is specifically leaning into credit cards. So since the Bible calls out oppression as the leading cause of poverty, and since this text forbids interest on those in need, how should we think through credit cards? Which often will profit the upwardly mobile at the cost of those in need, accruing criminally high interest rates.
Yeah.
So any thoughts, Matt, on, I guess like taking advantage of a system like the credit card system that is very predatory in nature, especially as it relates to interest?
Yeah, it's a great question. Although I don't know, I think I'm curious about the stats behind this too, because at least the stats that I've come across about like what the average consumer debt is, I think there's a lot of like upwardly mobile folks that also carry like a crazy amount of consumer credit card debt, and so are therefore paying some of the same crazy criminally high interest rates of like 26%, APR. So great question. I mean, so you have the school of thought that like Dave Ramsey, it's just like cut them all up, never use a credit card.
Yeah.
He's doing that, I think, more because of the temptation it is to pretend that you have money that you don't have.
Correct.
And to use it as kind of like your own personal payday loan kind of system. Because it functions in many ways like that.
Similarly,
for people that don't. And his principle, which is really wise, is, buy what you can afford. Don't buy more than you can afford. And where some of Dave Ramsey's stuff and where credit cards can be helpful, if you do have the funds available to pay off your credit card every month and not ever pay $1 of interest and never accrue interest.
Which is how we use our credit cards.
Which is how many try to use credit cards and do use credit cards. That's actually helpful in terms of building a credit score.
Yeah.
When you do someday go to like apply for a mortgage or a business loan, like if you've never used a credit card and you have no credit score, you are not getting that loan, friend. You are.
Our friend Dave would also say to not do those things as well.
Yeah, that's true. He would say pay all that. And that's a luxury of very few. I think. I don't think many people can buy a house without that. I think that might. I mean, even where we are right now in this cultural moment, that's very few people. But all to say, I love that this person's thinking about the broader system. And are we essentially, if we are someone who's paying off our credit card every month, and therefore we get like benefits, we get cash back, and where is that cash coming from? Well, it's coming from all the people that can't pay it off every month and are therefore paying, it's their interest that's funding our rewards points.
Yeah.
And I mean, even like the first thing you're doing is zooming out to ask questions about the systems you're in, which I love that. And I don't think, I don't do that enough. I think this works. It's pragmatic. It's not making any negative stuff for me in my life. So I'm fine. And the first step of being a person of Jubilee, when you think about the economics of Jubilee specifically, is to go, what am I participating in without knowing I'm participating in it?
Right.
Like, let me try to get behind the curtain a little bit there.
Yeah.
So all to say, I really appreciate the question. And I don't know what the answer is. I think credit cards have a legitimate service that provide a service. I think of how before credit cards at like a general store, there would be, you could buy things on credit because you were waiting for your payment to come in at a certain point, and this person knew you. You were from the same place. They might have been part of what we might call our clan, that, like you're a known entity.
Put it on the tab.
And you could put it on a tab because you were good for it. Your name, your reputation was good for it. That does not exist in our culture anymore. We have cards. We have little plastic cards now instead that say so.
The pool I grew up going to had that at the concession stand.
Had the credit.
Man, my parents were mad at me at the end of the summer.
You racked up a little snack shack, bill, huh?
I had a lot of popsicles. And
That's
frozen
awesome.
pizza, man.
Yeah. So I think, Yeah, I think it's great to think about credit cards. I wouldn't say using credit cards is inherently wrong, but I do think to also probably on the macro level, think about how are there ways of helping people that legitimately need money now that they don't have now, but are working toward and taking responsibility for. That's the legitimate service.
Right.
Where our culture's at is like, I just have an immediacy. I need it now. I want it. This little plastic card enables me to get it now. I'm thinking about the affordability of it. So if we're going to zoom out and really care for people, it's can you come alongside people that have never been taught principles of like how to do that with money? How do we even attack the bigger cultural idol of materialism and greed?
Right.
How do we get out of just consumeristic life?
Yeah.
And I think there's an all of life kind of discipleship piece that's going to come of that. So one of the ways you can be weird is maybe by even inviting people in your circle, wherever this would make sense, to talk about how they've thought about some of those things.
Yeah.
How they've, there's some examples that I've thought about, but I don't know that I've got a specific one in mind that would work for like a neighborhood type thing. But where you could host just a conversation about, consumer debt in America. Here's a stat that I read in a recent news thing. Is that something that has been experienced in our own neighborhood? And if so, what does it look like for our immediate
to like band
folks
together
to band together and like help each other come out of consumer debt? That would be a kind of a bringing this macro level problem down into like how can I have an impact in that space?
Okay. So credit cards, we solved that one.
We solved it. Yeah, sure.
So this next question is also pretty practical as well. So their person writes, one of the defining aspects of America is the idea of civil society being the first line of defense against the problems and brokenness of the world. So it seems to me to balance the excesses of government and unfettered capitalism, it seems to be a way to balance those things. Excuse me. So what is the church's role in galvanizing and owning that idea? So what's our role in excesses and unfettered capitalism and also caring about brokenness around us, Matt, as the church?
Yeah, really good. Okay, so I'm sure lots of Christians would answer this question slightly differently.
Yeah, very differently.
I think with the question being specifically, what's the church's role? I think it's to first and foremost never forget that the church's primary mission is what Jesus commissioned us to do, and to make disciples.
Yeah.
And to make disciples which has been a conviction that I've experienced recently too, who talk about generosity, who talk about money more than is commonly comfortable. Like one of the ways I'm getting weirder as a Christian right now is I'm talking about money more than I used to.
It's
and then
true.
I'm comfortable with.
He is.
And it's, yeah. And I hope I'm not freaking you out. And I'm not asking for we're not doing a capital campaign right now. It's not, it's not like I'm asking for your money.
I don't have a weird agenda. I promise.
Someday I will come asking for money for a capital campaign, but that's not why I'm doing it.
A church plant coming near you.
Exactly. Right. Like someday we'll have those, but I'm weirder in talking about this now. And I think that making generosity and actually talking about our money part of our discipleship more than it is commonly in kind of our privatized, individualized, 21st century Western kind of approach to life. I think that's a huge thing that the church can do. I think to then broaden it out to the level of
societal.
Yeah. I do think to not outsource mercy and compassion.
Yeah.
And for Christians to say, it's my responsibility to care for the things that God has entrusted to me and my circle. And some of us have bigger circles than others. Some of us should aspire to have bigger circles than we currently have.
Right.
And some of us play small, and we're not doing that. But you're thinking about, my clan, my family and extended family, my church family. I've got responsibility there. You're thinking about the place that God has put you. And even the Jeremiah 29 letter to the exiles, like seek the shalom, seek the well-being of the place that God has sent you. You have responsibility for a place.
Yeah.
So to not say, okay, well, there's poor people, the government takes care of poor people. Like kill that idea in your mind and think about, okay, well, government has opportunity to do that maybe in a way that I don't on a micro level.
Yeah.
But I'm not outsourcing it. I'm not thinking about it.
Or you're not abdicating.
Abdicating is a good word.
Yeah.
Abdicating is a good word because that's like I'm washing my hands of that responsibility.
It's the opposite of responsibility.
Correct.
Yeah.
And or to see kind of like taxes as like, well, like the government taxes me so they can take care of poor people.
Right.
So I think to break down that idea and say, no, I'm actually called by God to be meaningfully involved in caring for those that are poor, that don't have material resources. So that would be a way to do it. But I do think that the Jubilee at the macro level, the Jubilee holds these things in tension in a beautiful way that says private ownership and the responsibility that comes with private ownership is good. Don't apologize for that. Don't apologize for taking responsibility for a place. And be in a costly way, be merciful and gracious in a way that empowers other people who wouldn't have economic opportunity to have economic opportunity. And let it cost you what you could rightfully claim as your own. Let it cost you some of that, a good bit of that, so that other people have a shot to do that.
So real practically, you mentioned just before this, you've been more weird in talking about finances, right? What do you think from a pastoral perspective is one way we could actually grow in being more weird and talking about money? Like what's one way we can invite other people into that discussion with us? Yeah,
if you want one kind of out there idea that I know actually a couple guys in our church are doing right now in this moment, take a Sabbath. Let's live in this Sabbath kind of Jubilee kind of concept. Take a Sabbath from saving for retirement. If you're someone that likes to maximize your retirement Roth IRA, if you're someone that's like putting a bunch of money toward that.
We're talking a whole year with the
Sabbath.
So
okay, let's talk about first downs, not touchdowns. Raphael talked about this at the men's retreat, so that language is in my head.
I'm like, right? Whoa, okay.
First
let's define
downs, not
Sabbath
touchdowns.
here,
Is it valid to save some money for retirement? It is. Is it valid to save $10 million for retirement? I don't know. Why? Why are you saving that much money? And what could you be doing with that money now?
Well, I'm not, so.
Well, people have these numbers in their mind of I've got to get to this line to be able to retire.
Right.
And don't always have the community around them to ask, why is that the number?
Yeah.
And I think, so one thing would be have some faithful Christian friends that are going to push you and not just tell you what you want to hear.
Right.
Tell them what your number is, or tell them how you're approaching that if you're someone that's trying to save aggressively for retirement. And then one idea in this idea of Jubilee or Sabbath, take a 3-month Sabbath from saving for retirement. And if that ends up being, I don't know what that is. Is that $500 a month? Is that $1,000? I don't know what your number is. But whatever that number is of what you're saving for retirement, that, on a macro level, that's not a lot of money. On a micro level, or to you, that's a lot of money. To me, that would be a lot of money. And think about then what you could do, microloans with that money. Think about something that's incredibly merciful and gracious that captures the spirit and principles of Jubilee that you could do with those. Give out an interest-free loan to somebody. Just do something like that with those funds, and start small. Start with the first down of a couple months. See what happens. See if God surprises you with some really cool stuff that plays out, and some stories of how he shows up in ways and provides in ways that you're not expecting, and in some ways that we box him out from doing because we don't actually functionally trust him enough to do that. That's one idea.
Okay, that's an extreme one. That one might be more than a touchdown in my head, but I was I don't know, bring someone into your financial planning for the year or something like that.
Start there. That's great.
So
Start
it's
there.
more maybe starting points. Maybe just what's your first down play instead of your getting a first down.
That was I went for like a 50-yard.
You went for kind of a Hail Mary situation a little bit there, but that's okay. I think though that gets people thinking in a direction. So we've covered all of our listener questions. We've talked about Bible studies this week. We've even noted that the sermon series is coming to a close here pretty soon. We haven't even talked about if we're going to record next week.
Oh yeah. Next week.
We should just do one more closing for next week. So if you have any lingering questions about Leviticus, that would be your time to send those bad boys in to us. But any closing thoughts for the people at home this week, Matt?
No, I'm so compelled by what I read in the Jubilee year, and then Jesus' fulfillment of that that it's a time of captives going free.
Yep.
People that have put themselves in servitude because they couldn't get out of it.
Yeah.
Being set free. People, debts being released.
Yeah.
There's so much gospel beauty comes from this concept of Jubilee in Leviticus 25. Yeah. And so we're getting into all the practicals, and rightfully so. We're trying to apply this stuff to our life, but don't skip over the beauty of what our salvation is.
Yeah,
and that we are people of Jubilee because we have experienced the Jubilee of Jesus. We've experienced the release of our debt to sin. Right. We've experienced the release of our slavery.
And that's even like the name of our church.
That is our name of our church. So just, man, I hope that there's an awe and astonishment, renewal that plays out in your own heart as you really dive into Leviticus 25 and talk about it in your groups this week.
Yeah. Well, you heard it here, folks. Let's make Liberty weird this week and the rest of this year and the holiday season ahead. And we hope you have a wonderful rest of your week.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody. Take care. Thank you for listening to the Sermon B-Side podcast. For more resources and information about our church, visit www.libertyharrisburg.org. That's Liberty with an I, harrisburg.org.